President Biden assailed Russian President Vladimir Putin, barred Russian flights from American airspace, and led Democratic and Republican lawmakers in a rare display of unity in a State of the Union speech dominated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This was a much different State of the Union address than the president would have delivered a couple of weeks ago. A month ago, no doubt fewer people would have watched. And joining me on the morning show, News4JAX political analyst and head of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, Rick Mullaney. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Bruce.
So the president needed to do a few things. Communicating, he was in command. Communicate to Putin he has no idea what's coming. In fact, he used those words. And that those assembled in the House were all in and united in this. Was that done and done effectively?
Bruce, this part of the speech actually I think was one of the stronger parts of the speech. It was the first 12 minutes. He highlighted it intentionally, and it was really kind of the tale of two speeches, one not relating to the Ukraine and the other domestic, and a contrast in the Congress. Clearly, there was bipartisan support, Republicans and Democrats, for what President Biden was saying. He brought them to their feet in this topic. He talked about, of course, and there was unanimity in the opposition to the Russian invasion, unanimity in opposition, in support of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. But I thought President Biden was pretty effective in talking about rallying NATO, bringing about the sanctions, the aid to the Ukraine. So overall, this was an important part of the speech. But then again, and it's unfair to lay this at the feet of President Biden, there's that question of why Russia invaded in the first place and a failure of American foreign policy. That was talked about in the response from Governor Reynolds. That's the difficulty here. But this was a sharp contrast. Clear unanimity on this topic, not so much domestically.
And I think the Republicans talked about the fact that when it came to this part of the speech, they were going to show that unanimity. So let's go to part two. Biden was looking to reset his presidency after a first year in office marked by rapid economic growth and trillions of dollars in new programs, but beset by the highest inflation in 40 years and a lingering coronavirus pandemic. The annual speech to Congress gave Biden a platform to highlight his agenda. Hits and misses.
Well, first of all, this was an opportunity for the president to try to reframe his first year in office. And he did that in the hits in sort of three areas. One is the American Rescue Plan. And he talked about $1.9 trillion, what that meant to the economic recovery, and of course, reducing child poverty. Second was infrastructure and the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, a big part of his speech. And third was the creation of jobs over the last year. That's in reframing this first year. On the misses side, Bruce, was inflation. That is the topic the community's concerned about, the nation is concerned about, and is really taken to task by Governor Reynolds on this topic. His solution is more of what you saw, a state-of-the-course solution involving the Build Back Better plan and more spending. So economically, he talked about the successes, but it stayed the course in terms of his solutions, much criticized in the Republican response.
I also found it interesting that the president himself offered some criticism of progressive policies in his party, critical of police killings of black men, saying the answer is not to defund the police. He says it's to fund them. And in fact, he said 3 times, fund them, fund them, fund them.
Bruce, remember the backdrop to this speech. The president has low approval ratings, and there's the backdrop of November and the midterm elections. Although this was criticized by some of the progressive wing of the party, this was positioning the party for November. This is good politics. In the eyes of most, this is good policy. Trying to reframe and reposition it. That was playing to that audience in front of him, but also nationally.
So we'll know today. Do you think this will cause a spike in the approval ratings and do anything to move the midterm elections?
Unlikely, Bruce. Hard to expect that from a speech viewed through a partisan lens. If you're a Democrat, there was a lot to like. If you're a Republican, you feel like there's no new solutions. In the end, it'll be about inflation. It's what people are paying at the gas pump. It's what they're paying for food, housing. That's what people care about. If that's the same in November, it's a problem. If you can do something about that, he's maybe on course.
I think we go back to Daddy George Bush. It's all about the economy, stupid.
In the end.
Rick Mullaney, always a pleasure. Appreciate your insights.